With our last section now, last part of the panel, continuing where we've started beforehand already with Naida-Mihal BRANDL about Jewish refugees from 1933 until 1943 in Croatia, and Adina about the emigration and extermination of Jews in Romania in the 1940s. Just let me also say very quickly before we start now that we are very pleased to welcome His Excellency Jan Sechter, the Ambassador of the Czech Republic, as a guest amongst us. He's still outside at the moment. Nevertheless, we're very pleased that he will be with us in a minute. I'll now will only shortly introduce Naida-Mihal BRANDL. She's a research and teaching assistant at the University of Zagreb at the Faculty of Philosophy and Social Sciences, and also chair of the Judaic Studies. Please.
So the topic of my presentation will be the Jewish refugees from the territories under the control of the Third Reich, which, as we all know, will change from year to year. My presentation will be confined on the Croatian territory, so I will not talk about the whole of Yugoslavia, but I will rather talk about two case studies from Croatia. One is Zagreb, and one is Split, that will be more active also after 1941. What I will do, I will try to present first to explain who are the Jews of Yugoslavia, and actually was Yugoslavia the nation state or not. Later on, I will talk about the arrival of refugees. These are first German, then Austrian, Czech, Polish, and so on, other Jewish refugees. The help of both Jewish organizations within Yugoslavia and international Jewish organizations, and then also discuss very briefly, because we have only 25 minutes, Yugoslav policies toward refugees and the changing of it during the time. And then I will finish my paper in 1943, so it's a little bit outside of the scope, but it's for a good reason. So first, a little bit of a geography, because we are a little bit confusing region. Yugoslavia, as you all know, was founded in 1918 after the dissolution of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And this is something that was very important for later for dealing with the Jewish history and Jewish communities, because we had two distinctive different parts of Jewish communities. Ones were these that came from Austro-Hungary, or actually the territories that were under Hungary. These were Ashkenazic Jews from Croatia and from southern Hungary that became northern Serbia. Then we had Austrian Jews of Dalmatia who were Sephardic, and then we had the Bosnian Sephardic Jews that were a little bit different than Dalmatian Sephardic Jews, and also the Sephardic Jews from Serbia that had a little bit different process of acculturation than the Bosnian ones, because they became really very integrated into the Serbian society. So this is something that was later very interesting when you study internal Yugoslav Jewish history, but I will not talk more about that, just to give you the brief introduction. And also Yugoslavia looked differently than it looked after 45. It didn't have Istria and part that became part of Yugoslavia after 1945. We had from 1933 to 1941 around 55,000 Jews passed through Yugoslavia. If you think about the Jewish community of Yugoslavia, just before the war, it had 71,000 Jewish members of Jewish communities. So it's and the Croatian territory had in 1941 25,000 Jews. So most of these 55,000 Jews passed at some point through Croatia, and around 4 to 5,000 were in territory of Yugoslavia in April the 6th, 1941, when the war started, and they were caught up with the war, and most of them perished because they were more easily traceable than the Jews that spoke the language. What happened with the first Jews start to come already in 1933, after Hitler came into power in Germany, and right away the Jewish community organized itself. So it was very active community that already in April the Federation of Jewish Communities that had center in Belgrade organized the committee for help of these Jews coming from Germany. Also the Zionist Federation of Yugoslavia entered right in. When we talk about the Jewish communities of Yugoslavia, this is how they were scattered through the country. So we can see that the majority of Jewish communities were in this northern ex-Austro-Hungarian part of the country, and then we have a few communities scattered out of these borders. Already a month after the central organization for helping Jewish refugees was organized in Belgrade, the one that was local was organized in Zagreb. And what was important is that the secretary of this committee was also the secretary of the community, and later on he will be also the secretary of HITSEM, that will start to be very active in Zagreb, and it will have one of its centers in Zagreb. Also, Hevra Kadisha joined in helping. So now I came to Croatian territory, and I will talk only about the situation in Croatia from now on. So what the community tried to do, so community and the Zionist group within the community, which was the strongest and best organized, though not most numerous, and Hevra Kadisha started giving different kind of helps. So they try to help with food, clothes, boarding, and so on, but also thinking about how to find these people jobs, or how to give them different trades, professional training, and so on. When we discussed, as I said, the Croatian Jewish community had 25,000 people, Zagreb one had 12,000 people. So it was not such a big community, so the finances were obviously one of the main issues. Finance came from both within the Jewish community and also from different international Jewish organizations. There were different public gatherings of Jewish community in Zagreb, trying to rally for their German brothers and trying to get also some financial help that they needed. Also, of course, the international Jewish communities organizations jumped in. So we have first the Palestine Bureau that had its office in Zagreb, and its main task was to enable, to give Jews documents in order to be able to go to Palestine. Then we had HITSEM that actually was financing the transfer toward Americas mostly, or overseas in general. So this is the way of financing they gave. Then we had JDC that helped Jewish community taking care of these refugees while they were in the territory of Croatia / Yugoslavia. And also two German Jewish communities organizations that both were founded in 1930s, and that actually gave Jews who were coming to Zagreb information about where they're going, and the interesting thing why they chose Zagreb and why Zagreb was the center of this transfer from Germany to the third countries was that Zagreb was very well positioned within the railway network, and also the Zagreb Jewish community members, as well as a lot of Zagreb citizens, spoke German. So this old, the Yugoslavia was not there long enough in order for people to stop being bilingual. What did all these organizations do in giving help, of course, food, shelter, and so on, but also trying to provide the different vocation courses that would enable these Jews to find job either in Yugoslavia, which we will see will be part of the problem because Yugoslav government didn't want to give work permits to Jewish refugees. And also, not only these refugees were part of this training, but also the Jews from different Jewish communities within Yugoslavia also passed these different training programs. So the Hevra Kadisha, Bnei Brit, and the Jewish community of Zagreb organized two different schools, one for female youth and one for male youth, to give them different rates. And also by that time the Federation of Jewish Communities of Yugoslavia had in Croatia one farm that they did Hakshara for people who decided to make Aliyah, and German refugees passed through this Hakshara also. When we talk about the numbers, so as I said, first the German Jews came, and I found these data with different authors. I still didn't have time to check it myself. Some people are giving these data for Zagreb only, and authors, and some are giving for Croatia. So it's very. I still didn't do enough background checking, but I certainly will before I publish anything. I usually check everything with primary sources. So as you can see, with the time of Anschluss, the number of refugees just skyrocketed. So we had really, from 1938, majority of Jews coming from Austria, and then later from different countries that were affected or occupied or by Germany. As I said before, I will discuss really briefly also about the attitude of Yugoslav authorities concerning the issue of Jewish refugees. So right from the beginning, the government had pretty strict or restrictive attitude toward the employment, not only Jewish refugees in the beginning. It was that part of the general policy that Yugoslavia just left the big economical crisis, and it was very restrictive toward foreign workers in general. And then with the very large waves of Jewish refugees will not change its policy, but it will become only more restrictive. We can see also from different police records that right from the beginning it was the Yugoslav authorities were very cautious and tried to right from the beginning to make this passing or giving residence permits temporarily. So they were not interested in keeping refugees. So right from the beginning, Yugoslavia was only the transit toward other countries. So this was something that began already in 1933, But from 1938/9, with all the internal problems of Yugoslavia and its policy and switching its politics also to be more pro-German. I don't have time to enter this. I guess you all know this is pretty general history. It became only more restrictive. So until 1939, Jews could not settle permanently, usually could not work, but could at least have temporarily resident permits. Usually they were put somewhere outside of the cities, but people who had children had opportunity to stay, for instance, in Zagreb. Zagreb had a Jewish school, so already from 1933 there was a Jewish class of 4 Jewish refugees in Jewish school. That one of the students there was this Chaim Bar-Lev that later on became famous in Israeli history. He was passing from Vienna and passed through Yugoslavia. So, since we heard from yesterday, so I don't need to repeat other colleagues that are more specialized in legal sciences. It's since the question of refugees became harder and just few countries signed treaties concerning right of the refugees, so also Yugoslavia then extended these restrictions even further. And 2 weeks after the Anschluss, the Yugoslav Ministry of Foreign Affairs sent confidential letter to its regional authorities that Austrian Jewish refugees who are in transit from either Austria or some other country should not be allowed to transfer through Yugoslavia. So this is even the politics becomes more restricted, and especially in 1939, especially after the war broke out, we have 2 additional hotspots opening in Croatia, and it's Vukovar that is on the eastern part, and then Čakovec that is on the northern tip of Croatia. And this was a very difficult period when also Gestapo after Anschluss used to send people to the so-called no man's land between Austria and Yugoslavia. And then the Jewish community petitioned the minister Korošec in order to let these people in. Sometimes they were waiting for days or for weeks. So we have one of the cases of 43 Jews from Burgenland that were expelled in April of 1938. And they were stranded in no man's land between the then Third Reich and Yugoslavia. And the minister Korošec agreed to let them passing through Yugoslavia and to be there as short as possible. Only after the president of the Federation of Jewish Communities and the vice president signed that really they will be just passing by. So we have more than one of the incidents like that, and the situation became even harder after in 1940. In 1939, we had from 1939 we have some kind of, let's say, internal remodeling of Yugoslavia, and we got something called Banovina Hrvatska. It's Croatia had its own territorial unit that had some certain level of autonomy. And by January 22nd, 1940, the authorities of this Banovina Hrvatska organized the internment. They were not called camps yet, places for Jewish refugees who entered Yugoslavia illegally. They were, I just counted those that were founded in Croatia. So they were Samobor, Lipik, Daruvar, Jastrebarsko, Makarska, and so on. Some of them, though, will be active during the war as well. So it's something I will not enter in this short time. And from the beginning of 1941, they were called camps. So Jews there were not supposed to leave. And we have, by the mid-1940, around 800 of Jewish refugees that were interned in these camps. And in all of Yugoslavia, because the others followed, there were 3,200 of these refugees. This is just the example how the policy harshened. You can follow the Yugoslav policy toward issuing visas for Jewish refugees, mostly through Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So these internment, first they were not called camps, but by the beginning of 1941 they were also called camps. What happened in Yugoslavia? War started in April 6, 1941, and we have pretty complicated situation, so that it's part of our history. Croatia was attacked, occupied, partitioned, and it also had a collaboration state. So the collaboration state of independent state of Croatia, this middle pinkish, I don't know how, as you can see, parts of this territory was ceded and annexed by Hungary. It's the northern tip where Čakovec is, and also the green ones, they are annexed. They were annexed by Italy, and in the middle there is a demarcation line where they were military control of Italians on the south, and on the north the German military control. And this is what made the whole difference of treating of Jewish policies that were different for Italians and for Germans. And so in 1941, whoever was able, they tried to move to Italian controlled zone. It's the zone that the laws were of independent state of Croatia, but the army was Italian. So this is, you heard yesterday about these camps Gatsko, and these were in this zone too, the zone occupied under Italian military control. So Italians right away started it was kind of protective measures toward Jews by the late 1941, when the pressure of Germans and Ustasha became as harsh as possible to deport Jews back from where they came from. They started to put them to different camps, internment camps, that were either a little bit behind, usually on the coast islands, and then soon enough they just opened one camp in the island of Rab. So in this moment the Emigration committee that existed in Split community actually took over the care of Jewish refugees, now both domestic and foreign. And the JDC and DLSM were here ones that really helped in great lengths. They also, what they did, they also collected help for Jews that were interned in Ustasha concentration camps within the territory of the independent state of Croatia, be it food, medicine, or so on. So the Emigration Committee of Split Community actually was founded pretty much at the same time as the Zagreb one, but its activities extended until the September of 1943, when Italy capitulated. The only, now I'm done, the only organization that continued working and helping Jews and at least until May of 1943 was the Jewish community of Zagreb, that was re-established by the Ustasha government in order to facilitate and actually to feed Jews that were deported to concentration camps in the independent state of Croatia. And we can see in archival documents that we still have German, Austrian Jews that were in different internment camps within the Croatia that were deported then by Germans, because the Germans took the very active role in deporting Jews after the August of 1942. In the independent state of Croatia, before that, the Ustasha were doing it by themselves. So the last foreign Jews that were still legally living in the independent state of Croatia were deported in the beginning of May of 1943, mainly to Auschwitz. So this is where I...
Thank you very much. That was 1 minute too early. I look very scary, obviously. Thank you much for this interesting speech. I think it fit very well to what we've seen now, looking at certain countries from the north to the south now, and see how similar the reactions of the different states are towards the harshening of the policy towards refugees. Thank you very much. I hope you do apologize before we continue that I repeat this again, but we really are very pleased to welcome His Excellency Jan Sechter, Ambassador of the Czech Republic in Austria, amongst us. You're very welcome. I'm sorry you were caught up beforehand, that's why I'm repeating this. Thanks for being here with us. I have the pleasure now to introduce you to Adina Babiš, who is a senior researcher at the Elie Wiesel National Institute for Study of the Holocaust in Romania. She holds a PhD as well as two masters in social sciences, and is currently working as well on the ERI project, the European Holocaust Research Infrastructure, and also the project, the Reconstruction of Holocaust Public Memory in Post-Communism. Her research interests are various and big, I would say, just mentioning some of them. The Holocaust memory, Jewish life and female experience during the Holocaust, salvation solutions during the 1940s. I'm very happy now to hear more about emigration, extermination in Romania in the 1940s. Please.
Okay, so thank you very much for the introduction. I would like to thank you for being here until the very end, and also I'd like to thank the organizers for this very good conference. My presentation today focuses on the title is Between Immigration and Extermination, Solving the Jewish Problems in the 1940s Romania. And it is based on a research I conducted on documents issued by Romanian officials, different institutions which played a role in those years in the 1940s during the Holocaust, and transcripts from the Romanian Council of Ministers. The time from September 1940s until August 1944 can be characterized by the issuing of tens of decree laws, hundreds of government decision resolutions and ministry orders against Jewish population in Romania. And to pursue this ethnic cleansing, the Antonescu governments proceeded into implementing several important directions through which the Jewish life was severely impacted, transformed. In this context, emigration, along with deportation and extermination, was regarded as a viable solution. Therefore, in 1941, the position of the Romanian leadership was in favor of Jewish immigration, seen as another way of getting rid of its Jewish population. In 1941 and 1942, several boats left Romania with several hundred Jews. Some of them navigated under Romanian flag, while others with destination Palestine. Others remained in Turkish seaport with the passengers continuing their trip to Palestine afterwards, and other boats were ready to make the trip from different ports, the Black Sea. This issue made the subject of discussion at the Council of Ministers, which is revealed by the transcript. So in February 1941, Ion Antonescu and Iosif Iacobici, the Minister of National Defense, discussed the case of transporting a group of Jewish people that were waiting to leave for Palestine in Sulina. One of the main problems of the discussion revolves around if this boat can bring on its way back some goods, and whether these goods can be loaded in either Haifa or Constantinople seaports. In 1942, Mihai Antonescu, Vice President of the Council of Ministers, brings into attention the fact that after it was revealed that 4 boats with Jewish immigrants are ready to leave, no boat is anymore allowed leaving the country without the approval of Ion Antonescu, the Chief of State. Still, the discussions continue in the year of 1942, and they refer especially to the advantages the Romanian state would have if they would support the immigration. First, the elimination of the unwanted elements, and second, the financial advantages that could be brought through the taxes that would be asked in exchange of securing the transportations. Later in the year, the subject is readdressed in another discussion of the Council of Ministers with an accent on how the immigration could take place. It is specified that the government is banning the transportation of Jews with boats that are also used in the war by Romanians and Germans. The sum asked for immigration are also brought into discussion, this time with state representatives focusing more on issues concerning how much the state loses for not being more involved in the immigration itself. Therefore, another research on the immigration at the time is requested. Considering the internal context and the political situation, Romanian state attitude towards the immigration of Romanian Jews in the early years of 1940s can be analyzed considering several coordinates. These coordinates are the result of different documents analysis, documents that refer to Romanian Jews' immigration to Palestine in those years. In the next pages, I shall discuss the documents and their content, considering the subjects presented above. The coordinates I'm going to follow are German reactions, other countries and institution reactions, the transportation boats, and the Romanian authorities' official decisions. So first, Germany's position towards immigration. Germany's position towards immigration makes the subject of several and important documents. One such document from January 1943 reinforced German position towards immigration that was of clear opposition. The arguments that go with this are the fundamental lines initiated by German government regarding the European Jewish problem that need to be supported and continued, the endanger of the alliances Germany had with countries in the Middle East, the presupposition that these Jews would act against the Axis either by collaboration with representatives of the alliances and by supporting a propagandistic atmosphere in Palestine, the need of using these boats only for war purposes. A very specific situation of immigration makes the subject of German authorities' position towards this. Adolf Eichmann stated clear in documents addressed to the foreign affairs ministers that according to some confidential information, the Romanian party is using its influence in Turkey to receive transit visa for 1,000 children and 100 adults that would accompany them to Palestine via Bulgaria and Turkey. Eichmann demands expressly that this operation should be stopped. The German authorities were not only opposing this, but they were also planning the stopping of immigration of Jews from Romania. In a document from April 4th, Manfred von Killinger, the German ambassador to Romania, is bringing it to attention of the German legation in Sofia not to allow the immigration through Turkey and Bulgaria of a transport of 74 Jewish children. It is stated in the document that the Romanians were warned that the transport should not take place, and the Bulgarian authorities were asked to stop this transport go further after it reaches Bulgarian territory. Germany's position is stated in other documents on the months of 1944, documents by which the German authorities refer to immigration as being impossible for it jeopardized the relations with the Arab population in Palestine. One solution to immigration was that of allowing a transport of children to go to Great Britain instead of Palestine, and that they should remain there. Later in the year, the German authorities made even clearer over 3 pages this position by also bringing several arguments, and I quote, The immigration of Jews from Romania made in the past the subject of many discussions as part of solving the Jewish problem in Romania. In the statement sent to the German legation of Romanian government supported its point that the only solution of the Jewish problem is allowing the unlimited immigration. For Romania, the immigration would bring advantages, for on one side the impairment elements would be removed, and on the other side the Romanian state would achieve significant incomes from immigration taxes that would reach billions of lei. End of quote. The tensions between the German authorities and the Romanian ones reached a certain level in the first months of 1944. According to different reports, the former refused to consider the German position and are still supportive towards immigration, yet they do not involve too much into the actual immigration itself. The Romanian authorities at the time considered that the international community should find a solution to the transportation of Jews. Second, international organizations' position. The immigration of Jews to Palestine was seen as the only solution for the salvation of Jews in Europe by different countries and representatives. As mentioned above, an important part in this during the early 1940s was played by several institutions, among which the International Red Cross. In a document from 25th of May 1943, the conversation between Mihai Antonescu and representatives of IRC reveals the intention of the latter to support the immigration from Romania by contributing to the transportation itself, if the Romanian authorities will only permit this. The Romanian authorities refused to give a clear answer, even one of principle, pleading on the international context situation and the evolution of the Jewish problem. Still, the IRC would continue its efforts in persuading the Romanian authorities to allow the boats to transport Romanian Jews to Palestine. If Milka boat left Romania to Istanbul without any protection on the sea, the IRC intervened that Tari boat would have a safer trip, especially concerning the sanitation conditions. Not only had the IRC pressured the Romanian government to allow this, but also its representatives with the Red Cross Romanian National Society. In a document dated from 26 of May 1944, they were asking Marshal Antonescu to allow 3 launches that shall transport children from Constanța to Istanbul. This document is accompanied by a note from the Romanian authorities stating that previous transportations were made under Bulgarian or other countries' flags, and this brought significant losses in the terms of finances to the Romanian state. The IRC is also putting its intervention concerning the Romanian Jew survivors from Transnistria. In a cable from August 1944, the IRC is asking the Romanian government to allow the transportation of survivors in Turkey or Palestine using Romanian boats under the Swedish or IRC flag and with the financial help of the World Jewish Congress. The situation of the Jews in Europe became of certain importance also for different Western countries that offer some solutions. The American government showed also interest in the situation of Jewish survivors from Transnistria, and so they asked the repatriation of 50,000 Jews that would still be found in Transnistria, the support of immigration by the Romanian government for 4,500 children and 500 adults, and the freedom of movement for 15,000 Jews in Czernowitz in the situation of some evacuation of the region. Third, transportation boats. Transportation boats are another subject that relates with this, and it made the subject of several notes and discussion, and it adds to the general picture of the time. The leaving of Pescăruș boat brought in February 1943, a letter from the main staff of Romanian Ministry of National Defense. This letter addressed the issue of Jewish immigration and was the reason for a longer discussion concerning the leaving of immigration boats. Therefore, the chief of the main staff and the Minister of Defense motivated the decision they gave that no boat shall leave the country by the fact that none of the previous boats that left Romania were back, and therefore the floating material is in danger. He believes that behind this is a secret consortium made of commercial companies, different passport agents, and so-called boat owners. Also, the Jews pay significant money to buy a place in a boat that is afterwards sold to another power, and so the Jews recover their money. More, the economic interests present the boat in different shapes and conditions they actually are. Other arguments and solutions for different regulations of the Jewish immigration are presented by Radu Leca in another report. If the immigration using Romanian boats was to be banned, the one under Turkish or Bulgarian flag would not increase too much. If these transports are sponsored by different Jewish associations from Romania to Istanbul, representatives of different Romanian authorities, especially a marine company, should sign agreements. It is mentioned that the Jewish organization paid $600 for every Jew that was allowed to immigrate. Families with children and young survivors should be allowed to leave after a commission is analyzing each case and give its acceptance. The money collected should be shared afterwards between the Romanian Marine Company, the Patronage Council of Social Activities, and Central Jewish Office, which is a sort of Jewish Judenrat. The immigration would continue using the boats, and in December 1943, the Romanian Red Cross National Society is addressing a letter to the Ministry of Council to let known that they rented a boat they intend to use for the transportation of Jewish children to Palestine. They asked for permission to make this transportation and to initiate the needed changes and improvements. This request received a favorable decision, and the trip was sponsored by Goren Goldstein. Another document issued at the end of 1943 discusses the request made by the Romanian Office of Transportation Agency that was asked by the Jewish Agency to Palestine to organize the transportation of Jews by two boats under Bulgarian flag, Maritza and Milka. Even if only the transportation under Romanian flag needed the acceptance of Council of Ministers, they addressed this request to the Romanian authorities for the boats would arrive in a Romanian seaport. This request also receives a positive answer. Romanian state decisions. Fourth, the decisions the Romanian authorities took concerning the immigration of Romanian Jews to Palestine in the years of 1943 and 1944 is another coordinate under which this subject can be further discussed and presented. In February 1944, Ion Antonescu allows the immigration of Jews. He considered that their interest is to leave the country as many as possible and so soon as ready, and he states that between the National Bank of Romania and the Jewish Central Office should be discussed the transfer of money of the rich Jews. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be in charge with making the necessary arrangements to avoid the losses of the boats. Following the report Radu Leca made at the end of May 1944, in June, Ion Antonescu banned further immigration without government approval. His resolution reads, quote, I have stopped the immigration in the present conditions. The immigration would take place only with government approval. I have given an order in that sense. I shall decide over the boats that are involved in time. In the meantime, without my approval, no boat shall leave the Romanian seaports. End of quote. This is followed in June by another resolution of Mihai Antonescu addressed to Alexandru Zizu that states the establishment of an office for immigration that shall further organize it. And some conclusions. The immigration of Romanian Jews to Palestine in the early 1940s has certain characteristics. The Romanian authorities saw the immigration as a way of ethnic cleansing of Romania, as the deportation was also considered. Yet, if the deportation was solely in the hands of the Romanian authorities, the immigration was much more complicated, for it depended on the international context as well. For example, the German authorities were against it for several reasons. It would jeopardize the relation with the countries in the Middle East. There was the need to use the boats for war purposes only, and the presupposition that Jews would act against the Axis. They were not only against immigration, but their initiatives went towards stopping it. Adding to this, the geopolitical conditions, the immigration was during those years supported by Jewish associations, initiated by international organizations, and organized by different private companies. Among these international organizations, the International Red Cross played a significant role through its representatives that would pressure the Romanian authorities to allow boats to transport Romanian Jews to Palestine. An important role was played by the American government that made several proposals and offered a solution in connections to their faith. The state would show some interest in the fate of Jews and solving their situation in best conditions, but only in discussions during the meetings with representatives of other countries and international organizations. And this would be also found in documents referring to immigration. The insecurity of travels could have led to a negative image of Romania, and the authorities were sensitive about this. This period bears the tragedy of the sinking of boats that were transporting Romanian Jews to Palestine and the impediments and dangers other transportations encountered. Most of the times, these boats, if allowed to leave the port, would make the trip under different flags, Bulgarian, Greek, and Turkish, and would be subject to struggles for receiving the Romanian authorities' approvals. Still, at the time, the Romanian authorities were also sensitive in connection to the high amounts of money that could be collected if the immigration was to take place under its responsibility and not of private companies. Therefore, they would react by trying to bring this transportation under their approval, which would eventually mean the Romanian state receiving the money the Jews were paying for the trip. The Romanian authorities allowed the immigration during the World War II, yet this was a risky solution for salvation. The boats used for immigration were in bad conditions, they were overcrowded, and sometimes their navigation was not guaranteed. The travels toward Palestine was subject to visa-related decisions of other countries, and the trips were not direct most of the times. However, this was maybe the only solution at the time, and for some 3,000 Jews, this became a certainty. Unfortunately, for almost 1,000 of them, this was their last trip. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very precise and concise overview of the situation of Jews in Romania and the situation between emigration and extermination. Thanks also to both of you for staying in time. I would like now to ask Michael Frankl and Benjamin Neujoks to come up here. All right, I would just give you a chance to ask questions.
Thank you all for your presentations, which form something like a picture of Jewish refugees at the end of the 30s, a Central Eastern European picture, which is really fascinating, I must say. I just have a precise question to Michael Frankl. Your thesis, I think it's an extremely good idea to have comparative studies on the expulsion of Jews, on the denaturalization of Jews at the end of the 30s, turning around 1938. But your main thesis seems to be that this 1938 and the following measures formed a caesura, a rupture, and reformulated the concept of citizenship. If I understood well. If this is the thesis, I would be skeptical. Because you might also consider that the most important, or let's say preceding rupture of the conceptualization of citizenship was World War I. Because in World War I, not the fascist Germans or Italians or Ustasha or something else, or even the authoritarian Polish state, but the Britons and the French found this new measure of denaturalization and invented the enemy alien. And this, in World War I would always say that made quantitatively, and as for the radicality of the measures, made a big difference between what was going on at the end of the 30s and World War I. But in principle, this meant that it was possible to deprive one's own nationals of their nationality they had gained. This, I think, was the big caesura. And if you look at literature, at legal literature, from the beginning of the 20s, for example, this wonderful comparative book by Schwarz, he said that this was the invention of World War I to reconceptualize citizenship and make it something like a weak institution.
Thank you very much for your comment, and I absolutely agree with you. And I think apparently in my broader study I'd like to build it into a longer perspective of denaturalizations, including the transformations that the First World War brought, but we could also include the Soviet denaturalization just after that. So that, yes, I do agree, and I'm not going to spend more time on it right now. Thank you.
Any further questions? No further. Oh yeah, sorry, over there.
Thank you for your presentations. I would first like to ask Michael, to compare the situation of Jews in the post-1935 period and before that. Could you tell us just briefly what did it mean to be a Jew between the Great War in 1935, in the sense of their identification with the Czechoslovak state? Did they manage to transfer from the supranational belonging to the Austria-Hungary to Czechoslovakia? Just briefly about that, just to for us to have a general framework about what did it mean to be a Jew in Czechoslovakia. For Naida, I have a question. Have you found something about the spies of the Third Reich between these refugees coming to Croatia? And if you found some suspected cases or even proved one, what did happen with them? How were they treated? And for Adina, were some Jewish communities privileged? In a sense, the authorities were making the difference, treating them slightly better than the other Jewish communities. Such, for instance, happened with the Sephardic Jews in Holland, in France. There were cases that the Sephardi were treated better because they were perceived as more assimilated and more local ones than the other Jews. Thank you, that's it.
Okay, thank you for this question, and it's not a question that is easy to be answered in 50 seconds or something like that. As you know, Czechoslovakia is very often considered to be a country which did relatively well and which provided us relatively safe and stable conditions for Jews, and it is certainly not to be disputed. On the whole, the Jewish communities in the different parts of Czechoslovakia made their transitions and were struggling to transform themselves, their loyalties, into where they were now, which was easier for those that were in Bohemian lands, or if you want Czech lands, more complicated for instance, for Jews in Slovakia, many of whom were rather cultured rather in the Hungarian or Magyar way, however you want to phrase it. This was a longer process. Apparently, Jews were very often trying to set themselves out of the nationality conflicts and to declare loyalty to the new country, which in a certain way, because it was a transnational, although it was based on the Czechoslovak ideal of the Czechoslovak nation, or the construction of the Czechoslovak nation, if you want, it still resembled in some ways the old transnational monarchy. So that they were finding for ways to declare their loyalty. One of the ways, paradoxically, was Zionism, or declaration of a Jewish nationality, so that you were not German or Hungarian. And it's, by the way, connecting to my paper, and with this I will conclude. It is interesting that for Jews from Sudetenland, many of whom have declared in 1930 or 21, have declared in the census Jewish nationality, which was a sign of loyalty. Now, in 1938, this was a problem, and they would belong to the group which was supposed to be stripped of their citizenship.
I will answer really briefly. I was going through Ministry of Internal Affairs in Zagreb, and I haven't found it. Maybe I should say 3 point yet. I don't know. Till now, I haven't found something like that.
And I will answer very briefly. Also, my research, as I've said, was done on documents issued by Romanian authorities and officials, institution at the time, and also on the transcripts from the Council of Ministers. And I can say that in those documents, I couldn't find any discrimination, I would say, between the communities. But what can I say is that they were very sensitive and they did pay attention to the advantages and the money they would receive for these transportations. But they didn't pay any they didn't make any discrimination, or at least I couldn't find it until now, or at least for the research I presented to you. So I don't know what's the case. And between the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim, I cannot answer because I haven't found it and I haven't researched it either. Sorry.
Thank you. Bela.
Eine ganz kurze Frage an Benjamin Naujoks. Ich habe ein bisschen diese Zäsuren sehr, sehr scharf gefunden und sehr, sehr, also für diese kurze Periode sind sie mir ein bisschen zu kurz. Aber die Frage, ganz am Anfang haben Sie festgestellt, es gibt diese inklusive Epoche, also die Phase der Nationsbildung. Und da ist aber gleich gekommen, dass die Juden doch ausgeschlossen waren. Und da frage ich mich, also wenn die größte Minderheit von ab OVO ausgeschlossen wird, wo besteht dann eigentlich die Inklusion? Also, ja.
Ja, es ist schwierig, diese ganze Phase, also es ist ein Versuch, das darzustellen, weil die meisten Darstellungen, die es jetzt gibt, auch in Bezug auf die Flüchtlingspolitik, die gehen bis 23, dann hören die auf für Litauen. Und dann fangen die meistens nach der sowjetischen Okkupation wieder an. Und das erste Beispiel war ja ein exklusives Beispiel, das heißt, zuvor ist es deswegen inklusiv, weil es nicht nach Ethnie, und das hat eigentlich pragmatische Gründe, nicht danach geordnet wird. Ich weiß nicht, inwiefern das jetzt, ja, also ich kann es also an Zahlen, also ich habe ja gesagt, ich nutze keine Zahlen, bewusst nicht, aber wenn man dem Innenministerium glaubt, was für 1918 bis 19 eben die Zahlen aufführt, dann sind 245.000 Flüchtlinge zurückgekehrt bei einer Bevölkerung von weniger als 2 Millionen, das sind über 10%. Und das würde ich einfach als pragmatisch inklusiv bezeichnen. Ja, ich weiß nicht, ob die Frage insofern beantwortet ist.
I too would like to thank all the speakers for this panel. If I may, two questions to Dr. BABEŠ and to Dr. BRANDL. In your paper, Dr. BABEŠ, I thought what was missing was a sense of context. How does what you presented to us fit into the broader context of the Jewish question within Romania, given the context of the past and the problematic issue of the Jewish question within Romanian history, from more or less the time of independence, the 19th century onwards. And if I could, Dr. Brandl, just could you give us a few more details about the case of Split? I think because of time limits, you weren't able to develop that. That's it.
Okay. So my presentation today and the research focus it is in the context of the Holocaust in Romania, and immigration was seen, as I've told you, was seen as another solution of getting rid of the Jews and of solving the so-called Jewish problem, because Jews were considered to be a sort of problem with everything that was coming with this, and this relates with the anti-Semitism of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, and all the discrimination decisions that were taken against them. And it starts, for example, with the Article 7 of the Constitution, the first Constitution of Romania, which banned the citizenship for the Jews because they weren't Christians, and that article specified that only people of Christian people can have Romanian citizenship. And the immigration was considered, along with the deportation and extermination, as another way of getting rid of them. But because out of this, the state could have received some advantages. This was also considered in relation with these advantages they could receive. So I hope I answered to your question. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I wanted to keep on time, so I just mentioned it. But this emigration committee was operating also from 1930s, because Split was the exit port, Split and Dubrovnik, but Split was more like the exit port for the German and later other foreign Jewish refugees toward the West. So this committee was active from then. And the president of the Jewish community of Split, Victor Morpurgo, was the president of this emigration committee as well. So they worked with the big help of the LASEM and JDC. They provided everything, food, medicine, and so on. And since the war started, their role was becoming very, let's say, complicated, because Split was annexed by Italy. So it was part of Italy at the time from 41 to 43 until the Italian capitulation. So they had more, let's say, freedom of movement. Split Jews were also keeping in their own addresses. So they really were able to help in different ways, both to refugees that were within Split, and then later when Italians interned all the foreign Jews in the territory of Zone 1 that was annexed and Zone 2 that was only occupied, they were also helping all these both foreign and domestic, but now they're all refugees. And also what they could do, the independent state of Croatia allowed help of different Jewish communities and organizations from the Axis system. So they could also send help to Jewish in Ustasha concentration camps within the independent state of Croatia. They also send letters, so we can follow the correspondent with the Jewish communities in Sarajevo in the beginning, while they didn't deport all the Jews from Sarajevo, Osijek as well, and later Zagreb until 1943. And they also exchange informations about people. Also people send letters from Hungary, so people could kind of keep track of each other as well. They ceased to exist in September, obviously, when Italy capitulated, and the president of the Jewish community, that was also the president of the committee, he didn't want to be evacuated. He stayed there until the end, so he was deported and murdered then later in the concentration camp of Sajmište in Belgrade, because this is where Germans on the way to Poland, there were different, not to now go into the details of all the deportation routes. So.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Well, I have a question both to BABEŠ and also to BRANDL. Mrs. BABEŠ, you mentioned that there were children transports, even with larger number of children. Why was that so? Were they unaccompanied? Sorry. Or were they accompanied by their parents if they still lived? Or what was the reason why there were children transport? This was to you, to Mrs. BRANDL. You didn't mention that, at least I didn't hear it. So I wonder whether there were children transports, because in fact, very recently there was a film. It was a documentary, but it was a film according to reality in the 40s, I think, with children transport from Austria via Zagreb. I'm not sure now whether there were also transports via what is now Slovenia. No, I have no idea. I think it was via Zagreb to Italy. And in the film, they arrived already in the time when Mussolini had taken over. So it was a very complicated traveling, because everywhere there were Nazis, or in Italy, Mussolini, and it is not sure whether these transports finally reached Palestine. So could you both please give me some information about that?
Yes, I will start. First of all, the question of transportation of Jewish children, I found in the documents only starting with the 1943, and these are children that were in orphanages, and these are children that their parents were killed in the pogroms or in the other reactions against the Jewish population until the 1943. And I found in the documents references only to obtaining entry visas for these children, for also the transit countries, like for example Bulgaria or Turkey, but also for Palestine. And there were adults that would accompany these transportations of children. It was like, for example, it was like one adult for 4 or 5 children as on average. So only in these connections I found only the children were without parents because the parents were previously killed, and they were pulled in some Jewish orphanage. The community was taking place, so they wanted to help them by sending them to Palestine in the context to save them, actually in the context of the Holocaust and what was happening, to save them of not being deported to Transnistria or to So this is the context. Okay.
Thank you for your question. There were more than one transport. The most famous was one that ended in Non-Antola. Later on, they went through mountains to Switzerland, and then they were able to survive. And this was a transport that went from Split. So it's one of this Emigration Committee of Split is a very complex issue. I just took a very brief, let's say, survey of their activities, but they were both Bosnian kids and also the foreign refugees children as well. And we also had the children transport going from Zagreb, and it was supposed to be more than one, but at the end it was only one in 42 that went through Budapest. And also the son of the rabbi that was left in Zagreb, because the rabbi and the president of the community were very active in this. The community was very active in like the Emigration Committee in Split in helping Jews in the camps, and also we had Jews that stayed in Zagreb, and then later the mixed marriages cases that stay until 45. It's a very complicated issue. So we had only, unfortunately, one transport. Not all the children were there because they missed the transport went later than the deportations of 42. So later the Hungarian and some other children in Budapest actually were put in place of some of these children that were already deported to Auschwitz. So these were the...
And just to complete my answer, I found also some few cases of parents that would give money to put their children into this kind of transportation just to save them. So I found, but these are some few cases, or to put them in an orphanage just to save the children for.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, may I give an information which might be of interest to our foreign guests here? This was already after 45. So when the Jews from the east came to Austria, there were camps, or was one camp, I don't remember, near Salzburg. I think Salzburg was English. So they also didn't know what to do because the British did not allow them to go to Palestine. So there was a famous head of the Jewish community in Salzburg who managed to make a travel via the Alps by foot to Italy. And this was really incredible because there were people in Austria who allowed that, because it was a criminal passport, and it was the only one which was not under permanent observation to not let Jewish people going there. So they went just in the night. Can you imagine? People, women, pregnant women, children, overnight with these people from Salzburg to Italy.
But
and
I think it was also a documentary on this on this
that
subject,
exists.
if I remember correctly.
And there is now a yearly commemoration of that.
Yes.
With refugees, by the way, from other countries now, going this trip to show them what has happened there. Sorry, that was not exactly what fitted in that.
It's okay, thank you. I think we can see how big this whole topic is and how much it continues afterwards. Okay, I think the best thing ever for a conference is if the chairman on the second day has to stop the discussion. I thank you all very much for all your comments, for all the different, very, very interesting speeches that you gave. I started today in the afternoon by saying that I think this panel goes to the core of the idea of the conference, and I think in many ways I was right here, because drawing these pictures of all the different refugee policies of Central and Eastern European states in between the war time and of course also in the 1940s really draw a very interesting picture, something that has not been done yet very much. We will have time for a farewell coffee still. Before we do so, I would just like to give Michael Frankel the word for some closing words.
Thank you, Wolfgang. It is my privilege, and also it's a sad moment to, on behalf of all the organizers, to thank you and to close this workshop. I think you're all tired, so no long comments. But I think what we have heard here validated the idea of this workshop of switching the perspective more to the east, trying to build up a more comparative perspective, trying to go beyond these simplified ideas about territorial citizenship in the west and ethnic citizenship in the east. And I think we've also seen that a lot of what we have discussed historically, especially in the interwar period, that it has certain impact on the refugee policy, the approaches to refugees today, especially the very significance of the nation state. And we have been just discussing how these nation states came into existence. So I think in the follow-up to this workshop, we all will be thinking about how to bring this forward, how to further assist, promote research into this topic in this broader region. And I hope that we will be meeting in conferences or in projects over a longer period of time. I also wanted, just before we get to the coffee, I wanted to say that from the perspective of a co-organizer, I had a very easy job. I think Wolfgang also had a very easy job, because we were co-designing, drafting, helping in some ways, but the core of the work was with our colleagues from the Vienna Wiesenthal Institute, and it's a pleasure to work with all of you. And I'm not sure if I name everybody, but I really wanted to thank Bella, Eva, Sandro, Philip, Greta, Jana, Barbara, and all the others for this amazing job that you have done, and I hope we will continue to cooperate. And now what awaits us, thank you very much, what awaits us is a very special type of coffee, as it stands on the program, that's a farewell coffee. So thank you.